and they are in the transition period from Memorial to Pinkerton Academy. So Auburn is a totally different situation. Candy was similar to Hooksett, and it's the same policy.
Okay, it's at 8:30. Do you have a very quick question?
I do, in relation to what you just said.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Georgette Peltak. In relation to what you just said, I guess I have a question. As the superintendent to all three, or the SAU to all three towns, if, this is just an if, Bow or Pinkerton approached us about going to the high school, is it the board that makes that decision? I know Auburn voted to send their kids there, but would it be the board to say, yes, let's bring this to the public, or no, we don't even want to bring it to the public? So bear with my ignorance.
That is an excellent question.
Any further questions?
Let me tell you what the Auburn experience was. Over time, we began to get more and more requests to attend someplace other than Memorial High School. So, the Auburn board invited the public to be open and honest about why they were seeking other placements. Based upon the response that they received from parents and the community at large, the Auburn School Board actually directed their superintendent to enter into negotiations with Pinkerton for a tuition contract. When we successfully negotiated an agreement with Pinkerton, that agreement went before the voters in Auburn and was approved, and subsequently approved by the State Board of Education. And on or before June 30th, 2011, we put Manchester on notice that we were terminating our contract in accordance with the terms of the contract, and that would be effective September 1st, 2013. Hooksett, I mean, just because we're talking among friends and you're on the high school study committee, so I'll just share this with you. Hooksett missed that window of opportunity. If that's the real intent, you know, I know my mother is in the background saying, Phil, keep your mouth shut. But you know, if the real issue is we're concerned about the future, you know, that I've got a second grader and I'm concerned what cities are going to look like 10 years from now because they are struggling. Good people who are struggling, the resources are not there to provide what a nice little suburban community provides its kids. If that's the real issue, you've got 4.5 years to look in an intelligent and planned way at what alternatives might be and to pursue those alternatives. That's what Auburn did.
Thank you.
And if that's the issue, if that's the real issue, I'm just saying, if that's, it just makes good business sense for us to be honest with each other. It doesn't solve a case or two at hand. You know, like my kid is going to be a freshman next year. That's what I'm concerned. It doesn't address that. But I'm hearing from parents who've got kids at Underhill. And there's a lot of time in a very deliberate way for us as a community to look at what our alternatives are and pursue them. My opinion.
Just tell me why it's important. I just wanted Phil to add one.
My attorney is making me say.
No, just one thing.
just to explain to people why it's 4.5 years.
Why it's another period of time?
Oh, because there are benchmarks. We can opt out at the 10 and 15 years mark. Auburn opted out at the 10-year mark. We would have missed that. So the next mark is by June 30th, 2016. That sounds like a long way off, but to find a home that meets the expectations of this community, some high educational expectations. I mean a home, I mean an agreement with another receiving district. And to make sure that that's right for us and to negotiate it. Oh, and I left a very important part out. You've got to bring all that to the voters. It's really the voters who make that ultimate decision. And in Auburn, it was just so overwhelmingly in favor of the change.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to turn it back over to the chair for the business meeting. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I have a closing statement, please? For the forum?
On the form. I mean, the forum's been closed, but what I'd like to do is continue on with the business, and obviously this issue is not done.
Well, we have interested parties here. I'd like to make a statement. If you choose not to allow me, that's fine.
Well, no, I'll ask the rest of the board, any issues with closing statement? My only concern was that the forum was closed, but the board doesn't have any issues. Please proceed.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that I agreed with everything the superintendent said, but I am worried and concerned about the 8th graders right now. And I think that as a board, you've seen the problems that we've had in instituting this policy. I think it's a time for us to say that we've got to back things up and let those kids go and then figure out what we're going to do. Because these 8th graders are caught in the middle of something that has been flawed. And I am concerned about the 2nd graders and the 3rd graders and everybody else, and that may be the long-term solution. But you've got to ask yourself, why take a more restrictive policy that's flawed and have these kids be caught in the middle of it when we could back up and allow these kids to go and then figure out where we want to go as a board. And I think we owe that to you. We owe it to you to say, we haven't done the best job we could. You've pointed that out to us. And now we'll back up and we'll give it another try. That's what we teach our kids, and that's what we owe to you as representatives of you, and that's what I'll advocate for. Thank you.
Okay, Becky, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to facilitate tonight's forum. And I also want to thank everyone for their comments. I can tell you that for those who may leave prior to the end of this meeting, I'm going to recommend that we have a special meeting as we go through the agenda. When we get to that point, I'm going to recommend that we have a special meeting very soon to discuss questions, comments that came up tonight, how we're going to respond. Not everything was responded to, and anyway, I will be making that recommendation. So if anyone is wondering where do we go from here, that will be the next step if I have my way. So, okay.
All set?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. The next item on the agenda, this continues with our business portion, is a review of the expenditure manifest and action relating thereto.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the manifest for March 20th, 2012 at $759,916.64.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the manifest as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Budget adjustments? Karen?
There's no budget adjustments this time.
Thank you. Personnel? Personnel? No. Okay, items for the next agenda or other special meeting date. We have currently on there professional staff nomination, policies first reading.
I have a couple.
Okay.
Reconsideration of policy JCV, email notification system, meeting configuration, audio and video, school district, school board members receiving district emails instead of personal emails. And I'd like to also put on there Manchester High School Assessment Committee. I think we need to form a committee to look at why our children want to leave Manchester. And I'd like to revisit the BYOD.
I actually didn't get all that, so I didn't get this.
I can hand it to you.
Yeah, if you could.
And Chair, I just, at this time, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I just wanted to point out one thing that I've noticed in my reading, that our code of conduct has a conflict with our public input policy. Our code of conduct says that we will not talk during the public input, in reading the code of conduct, but our public input policy allows that. So I think that we should address that at the next meeting also, so we get those two in line.
So you want to add that to the agenda?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
Just for everyone's benefit, some of those items were included under our old business. We did not have any old business tonight because of the forum, so but some of those items were already on the agenda to be addressed. What I'll suggest now is that we have opportunity for the public to address the board again.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we're going to set a date for the meeting?
Well, I was doing it in the interest of time, but if I was going to include it under informational items, but...
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you might have forgotten.
No. I just want to give everyone an opportunity. I know there were some hands popping up near the end of the forum, so there is one last opportunity for the public to address the board at this time.
Kim Regan. I just have one question for Dr. Littlefield. I have to say, Dr. Littlefield, I 1000% agree with you with the examples that you gave for Auburn and the suggestions that you might have made there. If Hooks had decided to look 4.5 years forward and look at some of the surrounding schools for what I would almost refer to as an alternative contract to get started like they did with Pinkerton and Auburn, is there any ramifications that we would need to be aware of from Manchester to do that? Is there any problem with
Oh, man, you're asking me a hard question after my lawyer went. I plead the fifth. No, you have to understand, and remember, I was answering a question, actually, that was posed. The Auburn situation, and you'd have, Hooks would have to do the same thing. We put Manchester on notice that we were terminating our relationship. So for Auburn, as of September 1st, 2013, there is no tuition agreement with Manchester.
I completely
There is
understand that.
there is a single tuition agreement, and that's with Pinkerton. You could not get into multiple tuition agreements without, multiple tuition agreements are inconsistent with the current joint maintenance agreement with Manchester.
Okay, so in other words, we could not go in and negotiate with a Pinkerton or a Bow or a Pembroke that when our notice is up with Manchester,